Welcome to the Joy of Cruising podcast with your host, award-winning author Paul C. Thornton, a weekly conversation with the amazing cruisers featured in the Joy of Cruising books, comprised of The Joy of Cruising, Cruising Interrupted, new release, The Joy of Cruising Again, as well as other fun, informative global cruise personalities. It's the next best thing to cruising, hearing about cruising from the unique and diverse perspectives of Paul's amazing guests. If you hear about a cruise that interests you, book it at www.thejoyofvacation.com or enter to win a free cruise for two. Again, www.thejoyofvacation.com. We really appreciate your feedback, so leave us a text. Paul can't reply, but he may read your text on the air.
Hello, passionate cruisers. This is Paul, and I am delighted to welcome back this week on the Joy of Cruising podcast Sam and Brian, hosts of the massively successful DCL Duo podcast. DCL Duo is a Disney Cruise Line focused podcast with occasional detours into general cruising and Disney topics, including the Disney parks, Adventures by Disney, Run Disney, and Disney Vacation Club. It is great to get back together with Sam and Brian, who are not just friends of mine, but our podcast mentors as well. DCL Duo is featured in my latest book release, The Joy of Cruising Again, in a section called The Communicators. I have been on their podcast a couple of times and have been fortunate to host them on the Joy of Cruising podcast. Importantly, as discussed in that episode, I was in a funk and had a self-imposed writer's block due to the pandemic declaration in the middle of the writing of my second book. But a note I received from DCL Duo, whom I did not know at the time, inviting me on their podcast due to their enjoyment of my first cruising book, The Joy of Cruising, is what motivated me to restart writing. My only experience with Disney Cruise Line was a single cruise on Disney Dream. I took my grandkids on their first cruise. There was never any consideration for another cruise line for my grandkids' first cruise. Everything I've heard about the new Disney Treasure suggests it just might be the ship to draw me back to Disney Cruise Line. I figured there was no one who was a better ambassador for Disney Cruise Line than DCL Duo, so I am anxious to hear all about Disney Treasure. Welcome back, Sam and Brian, to the Joy of Cruising podcast.
Thanks, Paul. It's good to be back.
Yeah, it's so great to see you and be back with you, Paul. We're so happy to be on your show again.
Yeah.
So how you both doing?
We're doing good.
Yeah.
New year, new you. No, just kidding. No, we're doing really good. We just came back from quite a bit of cruising. 2 weeks of cruising over the holidays on Disney Cruise Line on two different ships. We're back at it with the podcast and work and all of the things and parenting Nathan. So life is busy as usual.
How's Nathan?
He's good.
Yeah,
he's doing really well. He's Sam just got him back home from a math competition. He's doing all this extra math outside of school. He's doing great. He's doing really well.
So for the listeners who didn't happen to catch our previous podcast, as I mentioned in the intro, Sam and Brian have the DCL Duo podcast, and Nathan is their son, and he's also the star of the show.
He is. He really is the unnamed star of the show. He doesn't get byline status in the title of the show because obviously Brian and I are the duo, but we like to joke we're the duo plus one rather than being the trio because he does appear on some of our episodes. Now, he's not on all of our episodes. To be fair, he probably doesn't want to be on all of our episodes, but we occasionally have him on, and we in particular have him on to give the kids' perspective. He's 11 years old now, so he's now a tween in at least in the Disney Kids Club's world. He enjoys being on occasionally and giving his thoughts and opinions on stuff goings on the ship. Yeah.
So a tween on Disney's Kids Club What does that mean? What is he able to do that he wasn't able to do a couple of years ago?
Yeah, so the Disney Cruise Line Kids Clubs go from about so the actual Oceaneers Kids Club goes from 3 to 10 now. That's a change in the last year to 18 months that they made. Nathan goes to the Edge, which is for kids that are 11 to I think it's 13 when they
No,
cut them off.
14.
14 when they cut them off at the Edge.
Yes.
And then Vibe is the teens club. So on Disney, it means Edge is not like a check-in, check-out club. You don't have to have permission to get yourself out. It's really come in and come and go as you please. Lots of video games, more unstructured playtime and activities, making friends and kind of hanging out around the ship. So I will say on the last cruise we took, I think we saw Nathan a sum total of 90 minutes.
No, we saw him every night at dinner, but he really spent a ton of time. Any of his like free time that wasn't like eating with us, or if the club wasn't open, if Edge wasn't open or was in sort of open house mode, typically when you're in port, earlier in the day, they'll go into sort of open house mode so anyone can come in and go, but that means they shut off the video games. And so then he's not interested in that. And then occasionally, if they had some organized activity going on in Edge, he would sometimes skip those. But they do have some organized activities. They had some fun like scavenger hunts and their kids club takeovers, like where the tweens would take over the younger kids, like kids club spaces, or they took over the teen club space at one point. So yeah, I think he had a really nice time, but it's very much less structured than the younger kids club. And as Brian indicated, lots more independence because he can check himself fully in and well, there isn't even a check in and check out. It's just come and go as you please, as long as you fit into that age bracket.
Now, doesn't Disney, for my listeners who are Disney curious, doesn't Disney do something special for kids on their private island?
Well, they do have a couple of things. So Disney has 2 private islands. Sorry to jump in there, Brian, but they have a kids club on both of the private islands only for the younger kids. So the 3 to 10-year-olds, there is a dedicated kids club space that you can actually check your kids in and out for secure programming like they do on the ship. Now, for the teens on Castaway Key, there is a teen hideaway area. I think they have something similar on Lookout, or they're going to have something maybe similar on Lookout, but maybe it's not ready yet. And they do have a cool like splash pad area on Lookout Key, which is Disney's newest private island. That is, I would say, open to all ages, but I think it's probably more directed at that tween group. So yeah, on their private islands, they have lots of activities for kids, but not full kids clubs except for the youngest groups.
So we got right into it, but so before we discuss any further, what's been up with DCL Duo since you were last here, maybe a year and a half ago? Tell our listeners about yourself, where you're from, where you live, professional background, anything you want to share.
Yeah, so we're both practicing attorneys by day in the Seattle area. We do the podcast as kind of we call it a hobby. I think it's probably gotten to be more than a hobby at this point, but as a hobby in our evenings and spare time. Yeah, and so it's Sam and I and our son, who we're not shy about saying he's on the autism spectrum, 11-year-old on the autism spectrum. Yeah, and we started the podcast as a way for, I think, Sam and I to spend a little bit of extra time together because Nathan, the time we started the show, was really taking kind of a lot of effort from us as parents, and we wanted a way to have some dedicated time to spend with each other. And so we decided to talk about something we both love, which is Disney Cruise Line. And we've been doing that since 2020. We're just hitting our 5th year anniversary here in March of podcasting. Just had our 500th episode of the show, which it is crazy, but perhaps even more crazy is that we started cruising Disney Cruise Line in 2018 and just had I had my 30th sailing with Disney Cruise Line. Sam is 1 or 2 behind, Sam? 1 behind. Yeah.
One behind, 29th. Yeah. Well, and to be perfectly honest, we don't have very uh uh we don't have lots of things that we do outside of work and the podcast and our son, because that pretty much takes up our entire lives.
Yeah, that sounds like about 23 of 24
Right,
hours.
exactly. And we both work full time, as Brian said, as lawyers. I have been a litigator my entire career in the government sector. Brian has been in the private sector his entire career. He started as a litigator and now does advising work at a major tech company. So, we have very busy professional lives, and that's where we make our money. And then we have this passion project. I like calling it a passion project, not a hobby, because it's more, like Brian said, it's definitely more than a hobby. We think of it as sort of a second job, even though we're not trying to make money at it. And we've said this before on our show, but we donate any proceeds that we actually make off the show to charity. We do have a show sponsor that is a travel agency. And also we have a sponsorship with the WDW magazine that also produces Disneyland magazine and their upcoming DCL magazine. But those sponsorships are in order to defray the costs of putting on the show for us. It's not about making money. As I said, we donate all of our proceeds to charity because we both have a professional living, and that's not what the show is about. And we also want to make sure that we can give our true, unfettered opinions about the cruise line and about where there's room for improvement without feeling like we are jeopardizing our livelihood, right? So we don't sell cruises, and that, I think, helps us feel like we can give our full and fair opinions when both positive and negative. I think our show is more positive than negative, though, because obviously we wouldn't have started the DCL Duo podcast if we didn't really, really love Disney Cruise Line.
Sure. Well, that was a good, comprehensive overview of Sam and Brian and DCL Duo. The one thing they didn't say, probably because they wouldn't say it, or they feel like they can't say it, but I can, and that is that they are one of the top cruising podcasts in the world. So, and that's not just Disney, the top Disney podcast, Disney cruising podcasts in the world, but one of the top cruising podcasts in the world, period. And as I've told you on a couple of occasions, and I mentioned in the intro, I consider them one of my podcast mentors. So many cruises to catch up on, and in the year and a half or so since we last spoke, you sailed some non-Disney cruises. So give us the highlights.
Yeah, so we have really sailed two lines apart from Disney. We've sailed three, but Celebrity Cruises was like 20 years ago for us. I think we'd like to go back eventually, but the two lines we've sailed most recently are Royal and Virgin. And I would say very different experiences than what we have on Disney. Interestingly enough, Virgin Voyages was our most recent non-Disney cruise. We did that back in October for a 5-night. And almost immediately booked a week-long cruise coming up this July. We were on the Valiant Lady, I think it was, for just like 5 nights. And we felt like we didn't have enough time on the ship to really experience everything we wanted to experience. I think its moniker of Disney Cruise Line for Adults, which is something we've heard it called a few times, is pretty apt. I think it's a really fun, adult-oriented vacation. It's kind of a cruise that you can make of it what you want. And we enjoyed it. We really enjoyed it. I'd say Royal for us is something that our son enjoys maybe more perhaps than we do. And so we do like to go on a Royal cruise every now and again because Nathan really enjoys all of the activities that you can do on Royal, and he loves Coco Cay. He really loves it. So Royal for us is like go, go, go. Lots to do, lots to see. I'd say Virgin was much more of that kind of relaxation cruise. And I should also just disclose, we've sailed Royal in their suite class, and we've sailed Virgin as in their Rockstar class. And so,
Oh my
yeah,
goodness, you were a rock star?
yeah, we were, yeah, yeah,
You
Oh
were
yeah.
my
actually
goodness.
mega rock
Well, first
stars,
of all,
Paul.
what you might have said this, but I missed it. What royal ship did you sail?
We sailed on
Okay.
Oasis
And I've
and
been on Indy. I've
Allure.
been on Independence.
So both Oasis class, and then Brian, yeah,
Yeah,
Brian sailed on
Right,
Independence,
right,
which
yeah.
is I think
right.
the smaller class of ship. Yeah, I have not sailed on Independence. And yeah, and both on we sailed what is it? Not the highest level class on Royal, but the
Sky. We were
second to highest, kind of the so there's
C.
there's
Yeah.
Star, Sky, and I don't know, Sea. So we sailed Sky, not Star. So we tend to this is I mean, this is I'm gonna just be honest. We're kind of bougie. We like we like sailing in a kind of a luxury experience. Now, Disney is a luxury cruise line, whether you sail concierge or regular, I would say, and we have sailed both on Disney Cruise Line. We tend to sail more in regular class on Disney Cruise Line. But I think outside of Disney Cruise Line, we probably lean towards sailing that more cruise within a cruise, concierge type experience. And so that's why when we have chosen to sail outside of Disney, we have sort of leaned to that more luxury side of things. I liked both cruise lines. I would say I liked probably Virgin more than Royal, but I agree with Brian. Like, I'm happy to sail on both of those. I still prefer Disney Cruise Line, in particular for our family. But I, really had a great experience on both. There are some things that they, hate and hasten to say there's some things they do better than Disney, but of course they don't do entertainment better than Disney. And I didn't think either of them beat Disney on food. And I'm comparing like regular food to regular food, not talking.
I think there were
specialty
some
dining, 'cause I
meals
think
that Disney, I'm sorry,
there's
I think
different
there were some
comparisons
meals that
there.
each of them did that we found to be potentially better than Disney in some places, but it's kind of an across the board. I will say that both lines eat Disney's lunch in terms of their concierge class sailing and the perks that come with it. Disney's product has really fallen
The
behind,
perks
in my
that come with
opinion,
it
over
for
the
sure.
last couple of years. They've keep raising the price and adding rooms, but not adding staff and not adding amenities. And I think that's really compromised their product on the luxury end. So yeah.
I hadn't heard you referred
Yeah.
to Virgin as, I think, the Disney of adult cruises or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I did call it
Disney for adults. Yeah.
I doubt this is original, but I hadn't heard it before. But when I did I've only been on one Virgin cruise. I'm booked on another, but I've been on one. And when I did my Reflections podcast, I called it a playground for adults.
Yeah, that's another apt description.
And it literally was a playground for adults. I mean, here I am in my advanced age. I'll leave it at that. And I'm riding a seesaw with my wife.
Right.
And
On that deck space, absolutely. And they have swings you can swing on in that same space too. Yeah.
Ages ago, I used to do a little boxing, and I couldn't go past the heavy bag and the boxing ring without if only 10 minutes, 5 minutes even.
Taking a couple shots.
So it was literally and figuratively a playground for adults. I know you went on a lot of Disney cruises since we last spoke. I want to ask you to give us all the highlights because I really want to hear about one Disney cruise in particular. But just say something about your Disney experiences.
We'll be right back.
The Joy of Cruising podcast guests receive a gift sponsored by GigSky of a 3 gigabyte cruise plus land data package valued at $60. Relying on ship Wi-Fi is slow, unsecure, and sometimes not available. And at foreign ports, travelers don't want to pay their carriers high fees. GigSky provides a solution that will save them a significant amount of money. To get your own data package usable on the ship or in ports, here is my link to GigSky. https://gigsky.pxf.io/NLOXOR. This can be found in the show notes below. For a 10% discount, use the code Joy of Cruising.
Yeah. Well, I want to jump in here and say we had our inaugural podcast cruise this past year. So in 2024.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So that was like kind of, so the big news, but I know you want to talk about the Disney Treasure, but the big news outside of the Disney Treasure for us was our inaugural podcast cruise. We don't plan on doing it every year, but we do plan on doing it again. So we did a 3-night sailing on the Disney Magic, the original Disney Cruise Line ship. And we sailed to the new private island, Lookout Key, which is on the island of Eleuthera. I mentioned Lookout Key a little bit earlier, but it was a fantastic sailing. We had about, I think, 20 rooms, about 50 people came on the sailing with us, and all booked through our agency sponsor. And we had just a fantastic time getting to, spend time with folks who listen to our show and folks who are friends of ours a lot of whom we, met through the show. We just had a fantastic sailing. We had a couple of private events with just our group, and we recorded an episode live on board the Disney Magic from Animator's Palette, which is, for Disney Cruise Line fans, like the classic restaurant on the original Disney ship. And so it was like just an incredible experience. And I would say that beyond the treasure, which we'll talk, I know I'll let Brian kind of jump in and talk about, that was like the highlight of this year of cruising.
Yeah, I'd also just highlight Lookout Key, Disney's newest private well, it's not a private island, it is a private destination on an otherwise habited island. But that island is a great add to the Disney portfolio. Everyone we've talked to after the first couple of months of sailing there has come home and said that they've loved it. Just had a friend on this week who stopped at Lookout Key, and he was just high praise for the whole experience. So really glad to see them do that. That was a lot of fun to be one of the first to experience that island. So yeah.
Now again, for my my listeners who are Disney curious, haven't cruised Disney before, say something about or distinguish between their long existing private island and then the new one, and who goes to which, so on. Just give the listeners a little overview of that.
Sure. So it's you have to remember, Disney is like the original private island creator. So Castaway Key has been around since I think when did it open up, Sam? Do you remember the exact date?
1998.
And that is their original private island. And basically, if you were taking a Disney cruise in the Caribbean, you were all but guaranteed to have one port stop at Castaway Key across the fleet that was sailing in the Caribbean. They opened up Lookout Key last year in June, and to make it its second destination. The big difference is Castaway Key is a private island. Disney has leased the whole island. They control the whole island. Lookout is actually shared. So Eleuthera, where the island is inhabited in the north end of the island. There's another cruise line that has a stop on Eleuthera. I think it's Princess, maybe. Yeah,
Isn't it
Princess? Half Moon
Princess.
Key, maybe. And then Disney. Yes. Built on the very southern end of the island. And I think the biggest differences between the two are one, Disney's using Lookout Key as really a celebration of Bahamian culture. So they have some cultural events and aspects to the island that they co-produced with local Bahamian artists and others. And also that because the island is not fully private, we are expecting to see a lot more in the way of shore excursions on the island than what you might get from a Castaway Cay. Disney also really tried to improve upon the food, give some new food offerings. I'd say that the offerings like cabanas on the island are much nicer than anything you're going to find on Castaway just because they're newer. The beach is spectacular. Castaway Cay has a protected cove for a beach. The beach on Lookout is much more just open to the ocean and waves and that sort of thing. The sand is just super soft and pink hued. And so it's a great ad, as I said before. Those are some of the key differences in terms of who goes there. So the island Lookout Cay is primarily a destination for Disney cruises sailing out of their Fort Lauderdale terminal. They moved from Miami to Fort Lauderdale last year as well into a brand new bespoke cruise terminal for Disney Cruise Line. Currently, the ships sailing out of there are the Magic and the Dream. The Dream rotated down there when the Treasure came online in Port Canaveral, and the Destiny next year, Disney's newest ship that will come out in November, will sail out of Fort Lauderdale to Lookout Cay. Some cruises, you have to check the itineraries very carefully. Some cruises are going out of Port Canaveral to Lookout Cay, but those are much fewer. The Disney
and mostly on the Fantasy.
The Disney Treasure, which is the current newest ship in the fleet that is sailing, is not going to Lookout Cay. So kind of have to make a choice as to whether you want to be on the newest and latest, greatest ship that's doing Eastern, Western Caribbean and go to Castaway Cay, or if you want to go out of Fort Lauderdale. A lot of the cruises out of Fort Lauderdale are doing what we affectionately like to call duo dips. So they are stopping at both Castaway and Lookout, which is just always a fantastic cruise.
Yeah, that's nice. That sounds nice. So it's a fair statement then that if you go on a Disney, Bahamas, Caribbean cruise, you're going to go to at least one island.
Yes.
One of them. Yes. Now, not every itinerary, but 90% of the itineraries go to either Castaway or Lookout.
Or
there
both.
might be an occasional, or both, right? There are occasional itineraries that don't go to either, but those are usually like a repositioning or a special itinerary that's going somewhere that they don't usually go. So, but yeah, generally speaking, if you're in the Caribbean or the Bahamas on Disney Cruise Line, you are likely going to either Castaway or Lookout, and perhaps both. So I would say check the itineraries, but as Brian said, it's the Treasure and the Wish typically going to Castaway. The Fantasy is doing kind of a mix of Castaway and Lookout, and then the Dream and the Magic are mostly doing Lookout. Although again, there's a couple of in there. There's a couple that go to both.
The major thing I wanted to talk about today is Disney's new ship, both for my listeners who are existing Disney cruisers, as well as, I've coined a phrase, I guess, my Disney curious cruisers. So tell us all about Disney Treasure.
So that's a tall order, but let me just start by saying the ship itself is stunning. So she is the second in the Wish class of ships. So Disney has 3 classes of ship right now: the Magic class, which are the original ships, the Magic and the Wonder; the Dream class, which are the Dream and the Fantasy; and now they have the Wish and the Treasure. And so the Treasure's Wish class, she's a sister ship to the Disney Wish. So if you've been on the Disney Wish, the layout is the same. Beyond that, so much has changed. And the way that I like to think about the Treasure is she has really 2 things going for her. One is you can tell that whatever pandemic-related supply chain issues, financial issues, build issues, the Wish was plagued by, and she was plagued by many. were not an issue for the Disney Treasure. Like that, the ship is decked to the nines, from everything to the carpet, to the details, to the venues, to the spaces. Your head is on a swivel the entire time you're on the ship to look at, just take everything in. It is a gorgeous ship. And I think our opinion is it blows the Wish out of the water in terms of how much they've invested in it. The second thing is that the Treasure's doing 7-night sailings. The Wish was doing 3-4 night rotational sailings, and I think a lot of people felt like they couldn't fully experience the Wish because of the 3-4 night itineraries she was doing. On the 7-night itineraries, they've won. You can experience the whole ship. You really can get to the whole ship. And two, Disney had to add a lot of entertainment offerings on board because it's a much longer cruise. And so now we're seeing them take advantage of some of the spaces they built on the Wish and some of the other kind of magical touches they put on the Wish that they couldn't really take full advantage of on a 3-4 night sailing, but that they can on a 7-night sailing. So.
Give us some specifics of the kinds of new entertainment options that they needed to add.
So, yeah, go ahead, Sam.
So, well, on all of the Disney ships, you're typically going to get 3 main stage shows. And so that's no different on the Treasure, but they, of course, had to bring a new stage show to life. So one of the new stage show in the Walt Disney Theater, which is the main theater on the Disney Treasure, is the first ever staging of Disney's Moana. It is called Disney: A Tale of Moana is what it is. But it is an incredible stage show. Fantastically produced, fantastically performed, Broadway quality. I mean, Disney's shows in general are Broadway quality, and it's just done better than any other stage show, I want to say, on Disney Cruise Line. They also ported over from the Disney Dream the staging of Beauty and the Beast, which prior to Moana was what I believe to be the best show on Disney Cruise Line. So now they have the best and the second best show on Disney Cruise Line on the Disney Treasure, as well as a short show that was on the Disney Wish called Seize the Adventure. So those are sort of the main theater shows. But then beyond that, they have in one of the adult spaces, I'll give you a couple examples. One of the adult spaces, they have a new event that they had never had before called Indiana Jones Choose Wisely. And it is essentially a 2-man show. It's a man and woman who their names or their character names are called Sage and Coriander. And you'll hear us talk about them a couple of times because they do several of the new shows. But they're new storyteller characters on the Disney Treasure. They use the main stage in the Grand Atrium, the Grand Hall a lot, which is the atrium of the Disney Treasure and also the atrium of the Disney Wish, to do certain activities and performances. But with regard to this Indiana Jones one, it's a retelling of Indiana Jones in kind of a choose your own adventure type of a way. I don't want to give away too much for those who haven't been on the Treasure, but I would highly recommend anyone who is, you don't even have to be a huge Indiana Jones fan. You just have to kind of know a little bit of Indiana Jones, and it's fantastic. They also do a show in the Grand Hall that is a 2-man retelling of Disney's Aladdin. That one is actually open to all ages. The Indiana Jones one is
Sam, you missed one thing about Moana. They have a 15-foot puppet.
Yes,
on the stage.
I'm
not giving it away.
I don't want to give away all
that's been in the news.
I don't want to give away all the.
It is a stunning piece of staging, and
yes, it is fantastic. The technology and the puppetry and is always fantastic on Disney Cruise Line, and this ship is no exception. But they created some more game show type of events as well. There's a Jungle Cruise themed game show. There is a in the Hero Zone, which is a sort of athletic space a lot of the time, but they also do some like fun and zany games, like team oriented games. There's one that's TikTok meaning the alligator from Peter Pan is themed after that. There's another one that's themed after Tinkerbell. So they've done a lot of additional activities to sort of add, as Brian mentioned, to what was on the Wish. So it has everything that the Wish had in terms of your entertainment, like trivia and karaoke, and all of the other Match Your Mate, which is a newlywed game type show. They have all those things plus some additional entertainment options on the Disney Treasure. And then but the most incredible thing I think about the Treasure beyond the cast, which the cast is of course incredible, is the spaces, right? The theming of the spaces on the Disney Treasure, just as Brian said, blew the Wish out of the water, right? So there we have a lot more parks themed stuff on the Disney Treasure, and this is the first time Disney has brought anything park themed really onto a ship. And so you have the first of its kind Haunted Mansion parlor, and you have a bar called Skipper Society that's Jungle Cruise themed. But I'm gonna let Brian talk about those bar spaces, because I just
but
just
before I
think
do,
they're
I'm just gonna
incredible.
say, don't sleep on the Sage and Coriander shows. Every one of them, it's like
Yes.
a low budget 2-person production. Like if someone came with like a bag of props, a trunk of props, and a sheet,
trunk.
and was like telling you
Yeah.
the story of Aladdin, and it's done so tongue in cheek and so well. Every one of their shows is not to be missed. But yes, as Sam mentioned, so as I said, the spaces are all designed fairly similarly to the Wish. There's a couple of changes here and there, but they are all rethemed for the Treasure, and so we get a lot of brand new bar spaces. So we get a Jungle Cruise themed bar called the Skipper Society. We get the Haunted Mansion bar, which if you are on the Treasure and don't make it to the Haunted Mansion bar, you have really missed out. It is like a huge investment of theming. There is stuff to look at everywhere. There's a 45-minute show that kind of plays on a loop, and it is really, really cool to see. Go ahead.
Now let me jump in. So the Haunted Mansion bar, wouldn't kids be attracted to? How do they separate out?
They don't. The bar spaces on Disney Cruise Line for the most part do not turn adult only until 8 or 9 o'clock at night, depending on the space. There are some adult only trivias and other activities held throughout the day in the bar spaces, and they'll run teenagers and kids out of those, but kids are allowed to come to the Haunted Mansion. In fact, they have a special line of like spooky sodas that they made and bottled for the Haunted Mansion.
Okay.
And yeah, so they're meant to be able to experience those things during the day. The other bar space that they rethemed, so they've traditionally had an Irish pub on every ship that they have put out. It's various names: O'Gill's Pub, Crown and Anchor. I always forget the one on the Wish, but Crown and Fin.
Crown and Fin, and
Keg and Compass, yeah.
It's Keg
but
and
on
Compass.
Crown and Anchor.
Yeah.
You've been on Royal Caribbean one time too many.
There you go.
That's Royal,
But,
exactly. He's confusing
But the
them.
pub
Yeah,
on the
exactly.
Treasure
Similar
is
names.
themed to 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, which was an original Disneyland ride. And so the theming has, like, you walk in and there's it's called the Periscope Pub. There's a periscope that greets you right when you enter. Currently it doesn't do anything, but we heard from an Imagineer that they have been told that they need to make it so they can see a bridge view of the ship when you look through the periscope. The ceiling is meant to reflect that you're under the water, and there's like fish life that sea life that they filmed. Yeah, but they filmed that stuff at the park from the sea pavilion that they have. And so it's meant to be sort of this nautical themed 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea themed pub, which is just really cool to see in and of itself. So they get, yeah.
So all of this theming, the kids have access to.
Yes, with one exception, which is there is their sort of piano bar, champagne bar is called the Scat Cat Lounge, which is Aristocats themed, and that one is adult only all the time.
It's
there
also
is
not
another
open.
bar
It's also
called
not open most of the day. So yeah,
that's true. It's not open earlier. And then there is another adult only bar called the Rose, but that's also on it's Beauty and the Beast themed. That's also on the Disney Wish. That one is identical, really, on the two ships, and that's sort of all the way in the back of the ship. It's leads into the adult only restaurant. So it's not an area that the kids would sort of wander into. But as Brian said, most of the spaces on board are open to everyone before 9 p.m. There's a few exceptions. And so the kids can enjoy the theming. They do have non-alcoholic beverages and some snack snack type foods in those spaces as well. So they're open to everyone. And then, but they do have some adult only trivia and things like that, where at those spaces during the day for brief periods of time become
the other big new the other big new addition to the treasure, Paul, is the Coco themed restaurant. So on the Wish, you get a Marvel themed restaurant, a Frozen themed restaurant, and then a restaurant called 1923, which is kind of just it's meant to be the upscale main dining where you get to see.
It's supposed to be Walt Disney Brothers when they first started their animation.
So on the
studios.
Treasure, you get 1923 with some different decor inside. You get the Marvel restaurant again with the same first night show as on the Wish, but they had to add a second show since this one's doing 7-night sailing. So they have a new show that they've introduced on the Wish. And then you get a brand new themed restaurant called Coco that is Plaza de Coco that is just it's really, the food really is great. The storytelling, the show is great, the space is great. It's a great new venue. Yeah.
I'm not surprised that you said that they took a lot of the theming from the parks. I saw an article about Disney Treasure. I didn't read it because I didn't want to read it before I talked to you guys, because I felt like there would be all kind of spoiler alerts in the article. But the article caught my attention because of the title. It was called A Theme Park at Sea. And I felt kind of vindicated about that, at least that title, because I wrote in, I'm trying to think, which book was it? Maybe the third book, the book you were in. I wrote, it wasn't even enough for a full chapter. It was an essay called "The Theme Parkification of Cruise Ships," and I made a kind of tongue-in-cheek prediction, although in the back of my mind, when I reflect on all of the gadgets, theme park-like gadgets that all of these different lines have, and of course, Disney is sort of the king of theming. Someone could actually put a theme park on a cruise ship. So I predicted that by the end of the decade, we will have a full-fledged theme park at sea, and that was the name of this article.
Well, and Paul, you kind of predicted it because the Adventure, which is coming to, it's a Disney Cruise Line ship. It's this mega ship. Disney bought a ship that was from a company that was in bankruptcy.
China.
It was the Global
It's in
Dream.
China, right?
It's
yes.
Right. It's going to be in Singapore. Yeah. It's going to be in Singapore.
Okay.
And that ship is slated to start sailing out of Singapore mid-December of 2025, so later this year. And there are 3 attractions at sea on the top level of that ship. One is like a coaster, one of them an actual real roller coaster, not like the water slide that they have on the Wish and the Treasure, and they will have on the Destiny. But yeah, a real coaster at sea. One of these spinny arm rides that is going to have one of those, and then it's also going to have what looks like kind of a go-kart track type of experience. And so, Disney is, they are theme parkificating at least that ship. And I think because that ship gave them more opportunity with this humongous space on the top deck.
Yeah, I didn't mean in China, but I meant serving the Chinese market. Yeah. That is great. And I'll bet you, since I'm in the prediction business at the moment, I'll make another prediction, and that is U.S. travelers will find a way to get on that ship.
Funny you should say that, because I'm booked on the maiden voyage in mid-December. So, yes.
Are you really?
Yes. I booked for myself and a friend because Nathan won't be quite out of school yet. So Sam does not want to make the 15+ hour plane flight over for a 3-night maiden voyage. But we're booked. We're booked on it. I don't know if it will actually happen. I've been very upfront with our listeners about that we booked it, but I don't know if it's going to happen. Right.
The maiden is going to happen. It's whether or not Brian will be on it. Just
the
to
world
be very
still
clear.
spins even if I don't go. Yeah.
And And normally Disney Cruise Line maiden voyages have restrictions on them so that you can't cancel them. This one is actually an exception to that standard rule. And so this one you can cancel or move to a different sailing, unlike the Treasure maiden voyage that we were on, the Wish maiden voyage that we were on, or the Destiny maiden voyage that we will be on this December. This November. So the crazy thing about this year is Disney's got 2 ships coming out, right? So it's got a ship in the US coming out in Florida out of Fort Lauderdale. It'll be another Wish class ship in November, just before Thanksgiving. And then in Singapore in mid-December, December 15th to be exact, it's going to have its mega ship coming out, the Disney Adventure.
Yeah, I remember when Disney salvaged that project. I knew when that project was going on, it wasn't going to survive, and I was right. And when I heard Disney, did that, I kind of thought they would really theme parkify it because they could try some things outside of their market, outside of their brand. So Ryan, if you do take that maiden voyage, I know you're going to podcast about it, but I'm putting my hand up now. I want second dibs. So
all right, you got it.
Before any other podcaster contacts you, so I'm like putting that down on my long range plan.
There you go.
All right.
Hey, one other thing about the Treasure, I remember, and I don't remember the specifics, but the last time I had you on, or maybe I was on your pod, the last time we spoke, I remember I wasn't real familiar with it because I'm not that much into Disney, but it was no question that there was a lot of resistance and pushback and so on among Disney fans. Did Treasure address whatever issues there were with Wish?
No, not really. But here's the thing. I think it's okay because I think a lot of people who had resistance to the Wish, once they sailed on her maybe a couple times, and once she got maybe her first 6 months and got some of the kinks out of the, operationally, I think a lot of those people came around and realized, yes, the Wish is different, but she's really a wonderful ship. And so those folks who are converted fans of the Wish now, of course, are going to love the Treasure. But I also think that even people who don't like the Wish because of its layout and still won't like the layout then of the Treasure, they just did the Treasure so well, and the theming is so good in all of the spaces. And most Disney Cruise Line fans are parks fans, right? Not all, but like probably 90% of them are Disney parks fans. And so you take park lovers and you put them on a ship that has this level of theming, and they're converted. They don't care that the layout's different, or that there's only 2 elevator banks, or that things are not where they think they're supposed to be, right? Like and also because she's the second of her kind, they've gotten a little bit used to it. So
I also think, look, as a rule, and I'll include us in this, like Disney fans don't do change well at all. Like we don't like change. We ask Disney to do new things, and then when they do new things, like universally everyone complains about it, and then they experience the new thing. So it's like, give me new stuff. Oh, you gave me new stuff, but you're taking away old stuff. I hate it. Oh, but I love the new thing. Never change it. Right. So I think that was part of it. I think the other part of it is the first 4 ships in the fleet. The Dream and the Fantasy are different than the Magic and the Wonder, substantially different, but they're laid out very similarly in terms of, you find all the adult bars in one area. You find, the layout of the ship is, very similar, where the Wish was very new and very different layout. And I think the Wish suffered from one, it wasn't fully finished when it sailed its maiden. It was finished enough to have passengers on board, but it was not fully finished. It suffered from some bad reviews. It suffered from, I think, some nitpicking around some of the design choices, that people focused mostly on the negative of those design choices and not some of the positives of the design choices. And so it really set people off on a course of, I don't like it. And as they've experienced it, as Sam said, they've kind of come back around on it. So there are some fabulous design decisions that they made in the Wish class ships. that I hope they learn from and keep as they build what we now know are an entirely new class of ship coming out in the late 2020s, early 2030s. That will be
2029, 2030,
it
and
will be
2031.
brand new class of ships. It will be smaller than the Wish class, smaller than the Dream class, in fact, but bigger than the oldest ships in the fleet. So yeah.
So, listeners, those of you who are Disney curious, go check out DCL Duo and become a regular listener. And those of you who are Disney veterans who do not know of DCL Duo, although I find that, they are very well known. So I hope we've turned you on to a new podcast outlet. So go over there and get all your information about Disney. Just make sure you come back to the joy of vacation and let us book your trip. Well, thank you for catching us up on Treasure and what you've been up to. Let's talk real quick about. First of all, tell our listeners. I just told them to go over and listen to DCL Duo. Give us all of the details. Where do we find you? And then how can listeners follow you on general social media?
Yeah. So the easiest place to find where we are all over the internet is DCLduo.com. So that's our website. And if that links to everything. But if you like to listen to audio podcasts on audio podcast channel like Apple Podcasts, Google, Spotify, whatever, just look up DCL Duo. We're on all the major podcast channels. We also host a live weekly YouTube show. So look for us on YouTube. But again, DCL Duo, and please like and subscribe on YouTube. We do basically one recorded show that's audio that goes out on the podcast channels every week. And then we do one live show on YouTube that then also goes out on the podcast channels, usually the next day. So at least 2 episodes a week. Occasionally we put out more content than that. If there's some big news or itinerary releases, we often will put out extra episodes. And of course, when the Treasure came out, we had extra episodes out as well. On social media, most places we are DCL Duo, but on Instagram and Blue Sky, is that right, Brian? We are
Instagram and Threads.
Sorry, Instagram and Threads. Sorry, Instagram and Threads, we are DCL_Duo. But on Threads and on Facebook, we are DCL Duo. So yeah, you can find us pretty much on anywhere. It's just type in DCL Duo and you'll find us.
Now you've told us some of this, but just recap. What do you have booked?
Well, our next cruise is in April. We'll be back on board the Treasure for a week, and we're pretty excited about that because we loved our sailing on the Treasure this past Christmas. Then after that, we are on Virgin Voyages for a week, sailing the 2 of us, and now it looks like some friends are going to join us. So it'll make that cruise, I think, even more fun. And then fast forwards?
And you might have said this, but what ship is the next Virgin Voyage?
The Valiant Lady again, and the Caribbean.
Oh, you're going to go on Valiant
Yes, we're sailing out of Florida. And then the next cruise we'll be on will be Alaska at the end of August. That will be on Disney Cruise Line. So sailing out of Vancouver, that'll also be a week-long cruise. And then
but that's a
which
that will
Disney?
be the Disney
The
Wonder. Yeah, right now it's just
Okay.
the Disney Wonder sailing to Alaska.
And that's a special cruise for us because we are booked probably for the first and only time in one of Disney's royal suites. So we'll be in the Roy Disney suite on board the Disney Wonder, and we're pretty excited to experience that. Yeah,
and then
first and only time.
Well, I don't know that our wallets can afford it beyond that one time. But then after that, we'll be on the Disney Destiny, her maiden voyage and her second voyage, which are both in November. So we'll be there just before Thanksgiving and then over Thanksgiving. Those are only 4-night voyages, those first 2 cruises. And so that's why we're sailing back to back. And then Brian is booked on the Disney Adventure for December 15th. So I think that's everything coming up this year. We do have a Royal Caribbean cruise booked for 2026 right now for a spring break on Symphony of the Seas, which we haven't been on yet. It's another Oasis class ship for those who are not in the know on Royal. But yeah,
and we're watching out for our second podcast sailing. We're going to
Yes,
try. We're trying. We're just waiting. We need to get the actual itineraries. We're trying to do a group cruise with Adventures by Disney on AMA Waterways for a river cruise back in Europe. So yes.
But that would be in 2026, not in 2025. So yeah, so we've got a lot of things kind of lined up, but 2026 is not fully lined up yet because Disney's behind on other cruise lines. You can book all the way through 2026, even maybe into 2027. But on Disney Cruise Line, they just don't release itineraries that far in advance. So right now, we're only on Disney Cruise Line. You're only really booking through, I think, 2025. I'm not even sure you can book anything in 2026 yet.
First few months.
First few months. That's right. The first few months of the year. Yeah.
What's left on your? Well, I know there's a lot of stuff left.
There
on
is.
Your
We have
bucket
a
list.
big.
So
we have
what's
a
on
big
your bucket list?
I'm gonna say Tokyo's still on that bucket list, and
I remember that from when you were on
and
before.
actually, I think we've sort of targeted when that's going to be because Disney Cruise Line has a partnership with the Oriental Land Company, which is who owns Tokyo Disney and Tokyo Disneyland and Tokyo Disney Sea, and they're going to have a Wish class ship that's going to be sailing out of Japan in 2029. So I think we're going to be targeting 2029 for a big trip to Japan and going on the ship and going to Tokyo Disneyland, Tokyo Disney Sea, and maybe even hitting up, a little Nintendo park there. So I think that's going to be a big trip in our future. That's probably the biggest one on my bucket list. I mean, I still have
Transatlantic.
Yeah,
you still want to do a transatlantic sailing.
I know.
Yeah,
I still want to go to New Zealand and Australia. We still haven't been there, but
my bucket.
Now, transatlantic. There's no such thing as a Disney transatlantic, right?
There is.
Oh yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Only one each direction per year because they only send one ship to Europe.
It's a repositioning cruise for Disney Cruise Line to get the ship
summer.
over to Europe and back. Yeah.
Well, you know what I was going to say. You probably would be good candidates for a Virgin Transatlantic.
Oh yeah, yeah, but
because it's a repositioning, so it's actually a great price.
Yeah,
and I know you mentioned that you want to experience it longer than the time that you went on before.
Yeah, the problem is all the transatlantic cruises, and same with the Trans-Pacific cruises, is they're all during school year time, right? So they're all during time when Nathan is in school. And we obviously Virgin, we wouldn't be able to take him on it. And then even with Disney, we just can't pull him out of school for that long because if we're going to take a trip to Europe, we're going to spend time in Europe, right? So it's not just the 2 weeks; it's like a month. So it's just not really feasible right now. I see that in our future, but maybe when we're empty nesters someday.
Yeah. And I'll say my bucket list cruise now. After talking, we did 3 episodes this past year with 2 folks who were on the Royal Caribbean.
That World Cruise.
And after talking to them, I'm like, whenever I get to retirement, close to retirement, or I'm able to take the sabbatical I've been given at work. Like I would love to do that 9-month cruise. That just sounded like such an amazing experience and opportunity. And it is not top of my list because I can't do it.
Not anytime soon. Yeah.
Yeah. But that's close to the top of my list for sure.
Yeah. A world cruise sounds great. Unfortunately, it's not on my bucket list because there's no way in the world my wife would go on there with me.
Yeah.
I mean, even on the transatlantic, it started out with 8 sea days.
Yeah.
And by about day 6, she was like, land, I need land.
And Brian and I are like, give me all the sea days. We love them. Yeah.
Yep. All right. Anything else on your bucket list you want to mention?
I think we covered it.
I think we've covered it. I mean, I'd love to go to all the Disney parks by sea, but that's not really possible. But that's sort of my imaginary bucket list. That's like that would be an amazing way to do it. The world.
Before we let you go, we always close out with a couple of light, dare I say, fun questions.
Yeah.
However, you've been on before, so we have a different set of questions for you. You have a huge following, so welcome to the many DCL Duo fans listening. so that your fans and my listeners can get to know you better, let me ask a few questions I like to ask repeat guests. So tell our listeners and your fans what's playing these days in your Bluetooth speaker, headphones, or however you consume media.
I'm gonna let
Go
Brian
ahead,
answer
Sam.
that. No, I'm gonna let you
Oh,
answer this one.
oh,
He controls
I
most
have
of the music.
yeah, I have such eclectic movie or music tastes. It's like so. I'll go with so I've been listening a lot to the which I think will flow into potentially some of the other questions you have. I've been listening a lot to the Grateful Dead. So I am our listeners probably know if they followed social media that I am kind of a Dead fan, and so I've been listening a lot to the Grateful Dead. But I also listen to a lot of like '90s era hip hop music. I listen to a lot of just straight rock and roll and pop music too.
We've been listening
I
to
have
a lot
very
of
eclectic.
Sabrina Carpenter, Brian. I thought you were going to say her. I feel like Brian's covering his face. He's a little embarrassed. I feel like we've been listening to a lot of her. I've been listening to a lot of, it's funny. I've been doing a lot of I'm training for the Disneyland half marathon, which is in just a couple of weeks. And I feel like I've been listening to a lot of Pitbull because his like rhythms like really move me. Like they keep me at a good pace. So, but yeah, I'm listening that usually on my, with my AirPods on my iPhone. But yeah,
I listen to an audiobook and you listen to Pitbull. So there you go.
No,
I need music when I run. Yeah.
random thought about Pitbull. I don't own any of his music. I'm familiar with all of his music, not all of it, but I'm very familiar with him. But I don't own any of his music. But I do listen to a lot of his music right before a cruise.
There you go. Yeah. It's just like, it's really
because,
like pump up
because
music.
because I know I'm going to hear it on a cruise.
True.
And Sam, when I was asking what's playing in your device, didn't have to be music. You listen to any intriguing, engaging audio books that our listeners may get turned on to?
We both read a great book very recently called Conclave that was made into a Netflix movie that was fantastic. I can't remember the name of the author, Brian.
Robert Harris.
Yeah. So I'm not big on audiobooks, to be perfectly honest. I have a hard time concentrating that way. Like I need the visual with the audio. So I tend to read, either paper books or books on my Kindle app. And so, so I definitely need the written word in front of me. Otherwise my mind just goes off. I have a hard time with news radio for the same reason. My mind just kind of, wanders. But yeah, I would say that was probably the best book that I read recently. It's hard. I read a lot for work, and so I end up sort of reading in fits and starts. I'll read a whole bunch, and for pleasure reading, like on vacation, which is when I read Conclave, and then I won't read anything for pleasure for months again until we're on vacation again because I read, like I said, I read so much for work. My eyes need a break after reading so much.
Tell your fans and followers what's the last live concert you attended. Don't say Grateful Dead.
Ones. Yeah. No,
I did.
Brian went to Dead and Company. Yeah,
Brian
went to Dead and Company.
I went to the Dead and Company.
Oh, you went to the.
Yeah.
That's a new addition to my bucket list.
Yeah, so we're actually going. I didn't go to that one with him. He went with some friends. So we're going this May. We'll be headed to Las Vegas to see Dead and Company together at the Sphere when they're back there, and we're going to see them their last 2 nights of their residency at the Sphere. But the last concert I went to, I think, was Bare Naked Ladies, who I was a big fan of in the 90s. I'm still a fan of. They're just a really fun band.
Well, at some time in 2025, well, let me say, I'm pretty sure at some time in 2025, I'm going to see a concert in the Sphere.
Yeah.
It's life changing, Paul. It's like after you see a concert in the Sphere, you're like, how do I go back to just watching a stage with
Right,
guys playing
right. That's
instruments on
exactly
piano?
how
So,
I
yeah.
envision it. It sounds like the most technologically advanced, and you know, I am. You read my book, I think. I am a music fanatic, and I've got to get
Yeah.
there. I've got to get there. Okay, okay. Well, I think I know the answer for Brian, but I'll ask anyway. Who's your favorite music artist of all time?
Favorite artist of all time is actually a Tribe Called Quest,
Oh, there you
who were
go.
recently inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame by De La Soul, another favorite of mine. So they're probably my favorite, alongside U2, who I had a chance to see in concert in Dublin, and that was also a very life-changing concert for me.
One
So,
one of my guests saw you two in the Sphere.
Oh, cool. That would have
Yes,
been
I wanted
amazing.
to. I wanted to see them in the Sphere, and I couldn't get tickets.
Yeah, that would be amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, mine. I'm gonna give two also because Brian broke the rules and gave two, so I feel like I should break the rules and give two. But they're two very different. Like, because my childhood one, like the one that gives me all the feels about home and I don't know, Billy Joel. I love Bill. I grew up on Long Island. Billy Joel is like quintessential Long Island. It's the music of my childhood, I feel like. And then, but I also really love Counting Crows, and we've seen them a whole bunch of times in concert, locally mostly. But we've seen them every city we've lived. Basically, we've seen them together. But yeah, so I love Counting Crows as well. But I love Tribe. I love U2. I mean, I love Dead and Company. Like Brian said, we both have quite eclectic music taste. The only thing I would say we don't really listen to is like metal, and we don't listen to a lot of country. We'll listen to sort of the country, pop country I'll listen to, but I'm not really into sort of the hardcore country. But yeah, we're very much, we like rock, we like alternative, we like hip hop, we like jazz, we love pop, you name it.
No, I found one other thing I share in common with Brian, and that is our affinity for Tribe Called Quest. So
Yeah.
okay, similar to favorite music artist, who's your favorite actor or actress?
Ooh, actor or actress. Oh,
If you don't say Chris Evans, is it?
oh yeah, probably Chris Evans.
No, I didn't say who's your favorite to look
He's my
at.
favorite to look at. That's true. He's my favorite to look at. Favorite actor or actress. Oh my God, this is so hard. Gosh, I don't even know because there's so many.
I'll give mine while you ponder.
Okay.
Will Ferrell. I like Will Ferrell.
I knew you were going to
yeah,
say
yeah.
that. I had a feeling you
He's
were going to say that.
Yeah, I love a good comedy. Will
Yeah.
Ferrell, or maybe why am I forgetting his name?
Vince
Not
Vaughn.
Dan Aykroyd. No, Vince Vaughn's good. Will Ferrell's better. The ultimate is, why am I blanking on his name, from Ghostbusters? Venkman, who played Venkman.
Oh my God, Bill Murray.
Bill Murray.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
yeah, you're
probably,
more of a comedic.
yeah.
You like, I'm gonna stay in the comedic realm though, but I'm gonna say Steve Carell. I love him on The Office.
Yes.
Michael Scott. I also love him in Anchorman and in 40-Year-Old Virgin. Like he's hilarious. So yeah,
I thought you might say Eugene Levy.
Eugene Levy is great too, but no, I gotta stick in the total comedic world with you, Brian, because but we both love a good Will Ferrell movie. I can't lie. We like a Vince Vaughn movie as well. So
this would be interesting to see if you have different answers. What's your favorite movie of all time?
So I actually think we have the same one of all time. We actually have the same favorite movie, and it's not a comedy. If you asked us our favorite comedy, it would be Step Brothers. But if you asked our favorite movie, I think we have the same one, which is A Few Good Men.
I was going to put I was actually going to put Step Brothers above A Few Good Men for my favorite movie because
What?
I quote it all the
hilarious.
time. Like it's just like
You do quote it all
Yeah,
the time.
yeah.
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 And that I would say that's my favorite comedic movie, but I think favorite movie of all time is probably A Few Good Men. But I watch Step Brothers more because the comedy, you can watch a comedy no matter what mood you're in, I feel like. Whereas you've got to be in the right mood for like a drama, serious movie. Yeah.
Well, there you go, Sam and Brian's fans. You know them just a little bit better. And I can assure you they will be back. And so I will ask a whole different set of questions so you'll learn even that much more about them.
Love it.
Sam and Brian, thank you for coming back on the Joy of Cruising podcast, and all the best to DCL Duo. You are friends of the show, and as I mentioned, one of my podcast mentors. Like I said, we'll have you back probably right now. I'm penciling in after that cruise on the floating theme park. but in any event, I know we'll talk to you probably in 25. In the meantime, take care of yourself, and as I like to say, we'll see you on the ocean.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Paul.
The Joy of Cruising and Cruising Interrupted, each $16.99 plus shipping, and new release, The Joy of Cruising Again for $18.99 can be ordered at the link on thejoyofcruisingpodcast.com. For each of the 3 books, use the discount code Joy of Cruising Podcast and get $4 off. The Joy of Cruising books are also available at Amazon. Order the ebook at Amazon or your favorite online retailer. Stay in touch by joining the Joy of Cruising Podcast Facebook group or following the Joy of Cruising Podcast on Instagram. We're constantly adding new shows. Please leave a review and tell a friend about us. We hope you enjoyed this brief escape to the ocean. See you next week.